So I want to talk about an interesting topic. This is a topic that I don't really cover that much on the podcast. And be quite frank, the topic of leadership was a very kind of conceptual, esoteric, far away concept for me. It felt very conceptual. And I know for me, building my business and growing a multi-million dollar business, the topic of leadership has become a forefront idea in what I do. And in fact, I think today's podcast is going to be extremely transformative for you. And so we're going to get into it in a second. Now, before we get into it, I want to mention something because I am hosting a masterclass coming up really soon, and it is called Speak to Convert. So it's all about using speaking to grow your business. I know for me, using speaking right from the start of my business over 17 years ago was the main mechanism I used. And I started off doing in-person presentations. Then I went to online presentations. I've spoken at big corporations. I've flown all around the world, spoken on stages for like Coca-Cola, Fuji, Xerox, Hewlett-Packard, all these big companies. And I've also spoken in small rooms, in masterminds. I've run webinars with 10 people on there and 1,000 people on there live. I've done lots of different things. And this is what I know is that using speaking to grow your business is literally the fastest, most leveraged way. Because think about it. It gives you authority, gives you credibility, and it gives you believability in what you do. And so if you aren't using speaking to grow your business, then you're doing it the hard way and the slow way. And so I'm going to unpack on this masterclass what I call the profitable speaking model. And so basically how you can use speaking, and most people are doing it virtually. And so it applies to virtual and in-person events to truly grow and scale your business. So if you're interested, you feel that calling to speak and share your message, go to colinboyd.co/speak. And it's free. It's a free workshop. By the way, it is live. So it's a live only workshop. I'm hosting this workshop. And so whenever the date is up there, you'll see it. That is when it's running live. So I want you to know I'm going to be there live, delivering, answering questions. Like it is a live interactive workshop experience with me. And so definitely go and check that out. So let's talk about leadership, hey? Leadership, I think, is so crucial in your business. And I think today's conversation is going to completely transform the way you think about your business, your life, and how you grow. Hey, it's Colin, and you are listening to the Expert Edge podcast. I was a professional speaker for over a decade, and now I focus on helping coaches, speakers, and course creators to speak and sell on virtual and live stages. The Expert Edge podcast is weekly content focused on helping you build your expert business. We cover marketing, storytelling, sales, communication skills, and so much more. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, and make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. So when I first started life coaching, I learned to ask questions. I remember doing a life coaching diploma, and the first event that I attended, I learned really the model of excellence around asking questions, about being curious, about using linguistic presuppositions, about using various patterns to build rapport and to influence people's lives. What I didn't realize at the time was I was actually learning leadership. I was learning a new way to lead and influence people. John Maxwell, he says, leadership is influence. And I think for me, when I was growing up, I used to read a lot of leadership books, like, the 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell. I used to read a lot of, like Jim Collins books around Good to Great. And I'd read all these different books around business leadership and personal leadership. But I think for me, it felt quite conceptual. It felt quite, out of reach. In fact, I had this stifled view of what leadership was. I thought leadership was, you had to wear a suit, you had to work in corporate, you had to be aggressive and direct and professional, right? That's what I thought leadership was. But over the years of running my business now for over 17 years, I've realized that leadership is not that. Now, can it be flavors of that? It can be if that is who you are. But I think the opportunity here is to realize that leadership is authentic. That leadership is you amplified. That leadership is about influencing people, influencing behavior, which is what speaking is, by the way. It's one of the reasons I love speaking is speaking allows you to influence people at scale. I think leadership is being courageous, is making courageous decisions. When you think about leadership, leadership is stepping out and doing the thing that others are afraid to do, and so that you can experience the life that others want, right? And when they see that, they want to step out as well. And so we're going to have a conversation about leadership because I believe that leadership is a surprising truth that many people don't understand and get. So most people think they have a marketing problem. So most people think, oh, if I could learn to market my business, if I could run Facebook ads better, then my business would grow. Now, is that true? Yeah, it probably would, but it would grow to a certain level. Because wouldn't you agree that there are people who you just meet them and you're like, you just have like a leadership capacity on your life. I remember for me, I got the chance to work with a woman. She was running. She was an employee and she was running like a cupcake company as an employee, right? And so she was an employee. And I remember I met her and she was wanting to do some private client work with me. And we had a conversation. And the second I met her, and she hadn't started her expert business at all yet. She was wanting to start an expert business. And she was like, Colin, I want to start my expert business. I know you can help me. I've heard some great things about your work. And what does it look like to work together? So we had a conversation about it. She loved it. We booked it in. We did a few sessions together. And I just knew right from the start that I was like, this woman is going to grow a 7-figure business like really quickly. And within a couple of months, she'd already done 6 figures in sales, like within like 2 or 3 months from using the strategies we talked about. And yes, sure, it was my strategies that we focused in on, but more than that, it was who she is. Like she took courageous, decisive action. She didn't listen to her fears. She listened to the faith. She didn't wait for people to give her an invitation. She made the invitation. So in other words, she didn't wait for someone to invite her to speak. Do you know what she did? She ran her own events to speak. She ran her own online summits. She ran her own webinars. This is one of the things that we teach in Elite, in our Self from Stage programs, is like, don't wait for people to do an invitation to you. You just decide that you are the one who's inviting. I love that flip of right? Don't wait for the invitation. You should be sending the invitation. And so I watched her grow her business. She's doing really well now, running a really successful expert business. And I think about it like, has she got some great marketing? Yes. Has she got some great strategies? Yes. But at the core of it, she's a leader, right? And I think that is a capacity that we can all develop. Because I will say for me, I had this fear of being a leader. I had a real fear of what leadership was. In fact, I never saw myself as a leader. I remember my youth group leader came up to me one day and she said, Colin, I feel like you're one of those people who you ride in the pack of the peloton. So the peloton is like, like those Tour de France, the bicycle riders, they all stay in that pack. She's like, you're in the pack, right? And she said, you never pull out of the pack right up the side. If you've ever seen them do that, they ride up the side and then they sit at the front of the peloton. She's like, I feel like you've never really done that. I haven't seen you activate that in your life and in our group. And it was a real challenge to me of realizing that I was living very comfortable, very much in fear, very much in like, I didn't want to step outside of my comfort zone too much. And because of that, I never pulled out of the pack and sat at the front of the peloton and felt the wind, the grit, the dirt, the resistance. But it's like, that's what it takes to be a leader. You see, some of you think, you say, oh man, my business would grow if I just had more people on my database. Like if I had the chance to email 50,000 people every single week, like I would make more money. But here's the thing is what most people don't realize is that the reason you don't have 50,000 people on your database is because you don't have that leadership capacity yet. Like you haven't decided to be a leader of 50,000 conversations every single week. You haven't decided to be that leader. I literally just got off a conversation with a client And he has, hundreds of thousands of people on his email list that he emails every single week. He does launches and does $3 or $4 million in like a 4 or 5 day period. And so the power of that is like I look at him and he is authentic, he is himself, he is amplified, he's present, he's not stifled, he's not professional. He's a leader. He's courageous. He's someone who steps out and shows up for his audience. And so, my encouragement for you today is to realize that you can be a leader and that maybe your problem is not necessarily having the right Instagram profile or the right description on your Instagram profile. And I'm not saying that that's not important, right? It's all part of it. But I wonder if it's deeper. I wonder if it's actually the fact that you haven't decided yet to lead. Like you haven't made that courageous decision to go, I am going to be a freaking leader. I remember the day I was sitting in a room and I looked around the room and I noticed that there was about 4 or 5 people in that room who were market leaders in their industry. Like if I said their names, you would know who they are. And I was not a market leader at the time in what I did. And I was in the room with them, I was in a program with them, but I wasn't at their level. And I realized that I needed to make a decision. And so I decided that day, I remember I said, I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to be a leader. And in fact, I said, I'm going to be a market leader. And even more than that, I'm going to be a leader of market leaders. And it's not about, I wanted to be better than them or anything like that. I just wanted to be a leader in what I did. And more than a leader, I wanted to be a market leader. I wanted to be known. Like when people think about speaking and selling from stage, I was like, I want them to think of Colin Boyd. And it was fascinating. About 3 months later, I got the chance to work with a market leader for the first time, like massive market leader, one of the biggest people in the world. And then from there, I got another referral to another market leader, and then another market leader, and then another, and I started working on presentations with people where they were doing $2, 3, 4, $5 million in revenue in one presentation. Isn't that just insane? And I realized that it all happened because I decided to be a leader. I decided to be someone who showed up, who took courageous action and stepped up. Sometimes people say, Colin, I would love to make $100,000 in one presentation. That'd be amazing. But they don't realize that as much as it is about the strategies, it's actually about stepping up into that identity. Now, how do you step up into that identity? I think there's a few elements with it. A massive part of stepping up into that identity is being around people who are in that identity already. I will say for me, the fastest way to up level yourself is to pay to be in rooms, programs, and experiences of people who are at the level you want to be at. Because all of a sudden you get access to conversations at another level. You get access to thinking at another level. You get access to a mentality at another level. And so to have a bigger database, you have to have more leadership. To have more people in your programs, more clients, you have to have leadership. To have a team in your business, you have to have leadership. To have an opinion, you have to have leadership. I actually think leadership is one of the deeper problems that we have to resolve and the opportunity that we get to step into. And so my question for me that I realized is that I was like, what is the lie that I'm believing about myself and my leadership capacity that's preventing me from really stepping up and into it? And for me, it was that I didn't see myself as a leader. I thought a leader had a certain profile, and I was not that. I was like, a leader is aggressive, and I'm like, I'm not aggressive. A leader is super serious, and I'm like, I'm a bit of a goof sometimes, right? I was like, a leader is professional, and I was like, I'm kind of casual. Right. And so all these contrasts, I'm like, I mustn't be a leader. And when I realized that, I was actually looking at my database. We've literally got, over the years, I've had 20,000 people buy my program. 20,000 people pay me money and buy my program. 20,000 people. That's like a whole city. And I'm like, this is just incredible when you think about it. The fact that I've built a life and a business where I've got so many clients and so many results for people and so many testimonials. And when I think about it, it takes the capacity to lead to do that. And so the question is, what is the lie that you've been believing about yourself that is stopping you from stepping into your leadership? I want you to think about that. What is the resistance? Even as you're listening to my voice right now, I want you to consider what comes up for you. What is the resistance, the lie, the belief that is stopping you from stepping into your leadership? Because if you realize that, first of all, you get some awareness and you realize that it's not true, because everyone has more capacity to lead. And so when you discover that lie, you start to realize, oh my gosh, I've really been holding myself back, keeping myself safe, keeping myself small because of this lie. And so I want to take you through 3 quick ideas to help you really grow. And we've already covered a few, but I just want to summarize a few quick ideas for you to step into your leadership. Number 1 is you have to act even more courageously. And so the greatest definition of a leader is someone who steps out in the face of fear. I think about Braveheart. I watched Braveheart recently, and that, incredible moment where he's on his horse and he's going back and forth and he's speaking to his men about going into battle. I think about Gladiator, which is my favorite film of all time, by the way, Gladiator number 1, with Russell Crowe, and that moment where he's standing and he's facing all of the barbarians, right? And he's speaking to his men, right? All that moment, I love the moment where he's in the Colosseum, and the main bad character, whatever his name is, comes up and he says to speak to him, and he turns around and he takes his mask off and he says, "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legion, servant to the true Emperor Marcus Aurelius, father of a murdered son, husband of a murdered wife, and I'll have my vengeance in this life or the next." How good is that moment? By the way, side note, I did that speech in the Colosseum on video in Rome. So you might be asking, why do you know that speech? Because I learnt it to do it in the Colosseum, right? Now, let me just press pause. Gosh, I'm a goof, right? I'm a goof. I'm an absolute goof. But I also lead thousands and thousands of people in my business. I also lead a great team. I also lead clients. I also lead people. Like, I'm a goof, right? And I'm also a leader. And so I share this because I want you to catch the permission that I want you to have. Is like, leadership is just about taking courageous action. I remember for me, one of the first times I joined like a high-level mastermind, and I will say, coming back to that concept of like being around the right people, taking courageous action was actually joining programs. This is massive. I want you to get this. Successful people don't look at absolute cost. Successful people look at opportunity cost. Now, yes, there is absolute cost. So what I'm saying is absolute cost is, what is it going to cost you? So let's say you say, okay, to hire this mentor, to join this program, it is $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month. You say, okay, it's $2,000 a month. But that's the absolute cost. But the opportunity cost is what you would miss out on, who you wouldn't become, what relationships you wouldn't have access to over that period of time. Maybe it's 12 months or whatever it is, what you wouldn't have access to if you didn't invest that cost. The most successful people in life choose the courageous option, which is, now obviously it's not about joining every program or making every decision like that, right? I totally get it. But what it is more about is going, if this is a right fit, if this is aligned, if this is the right thing I want to learn, this is the next season of my life, it's like, I'm in. And they make a decision and they go all in and they invest and they get in the rooms, they get mentored, they get advised. I just made one of those decisions just recently. I just invested double what I've ever invested in my entire life into more mentorship, direction, programs, all that sort of stuff. Because I just know that if I don't do it, it's going to cost me 10 times what I'm investing. And so the scarcity mentality is going, they look at the absolute cost instead of the opportunity cost. And by the way, this is something I want you to help your audience with, because your audience sometimes is in a scarcity mentality and they're thinking absolute cost all the time. But the true path to success is with the right decisions, right? You've got to still make the right choices for you. But it's like, if you resonate with the person, if you want to achieve the result that they can help you with, that you have to take the opportunity cost. That's the way forward. And I look at the most successful people in our industry and in my lives is they focused on the opportunity cost, not the absolute cost. And so we have to act with more courage, with even more courage. Taking courageous action is that thing. So my question for you is, what's the thing you've been putting off that you know would take you to the next level? Like, what is the one thing, project that you know that if you were to activate that thing, it has a massive potential of unlocking a next level for you? I wonder what that is. The second big point is we need to lift our standards to the next level. I remember for me when I got really serious about sending a weekly email, I remember I used to miss the email occasionally. Like I would occasionally send or even a podcast, right? If you look at my podcast, I'm pretty much delivered every single week for the last like 4 years. This is episode 317. 317 episodes I'm up to. And I pretty much, I think I've missed maybe like 1 or 2 weeks over the last couple of years because I decided to go pro. Now, being pro is not, you don't have to hire a massive production team, right? We have a team in the Philippines and a person in the US who helps, with our production, right? And so you don't have to go all out. But what I mean by this is like deciding to lift your standards. Van Halen has this famous story about how they used to ask for blue M&Ms in their green room when they went and did a concert. And it was just in their contract. It was just one of the clauses in their contract. We want only blue M&Ms. Now, what was interesting was people thought that was about them being a diva, but it wasn't. What it was about was they wanted to know whether the producer of the show, of the event, had actually read their contract, because they knew that they were going to be doing some pretty dangerous high-level things during their concert, like, explosions and fireworks and all sorts of stuff. And they were like, if they don't understand our requirements and they miss these little things, we're probably not safe to get on that stage. And so they set a standard in their contract of like, they wanted only blue M&Ms. So if they go into the green room and there was brown M&Ms, then they would then go to the producer and do a full rerun of the stage, making sure everything was checked in. But they were like, if they got blue M&Ms, it was a really simple indicator of, okay, these people have read our contract, they understand what's required, and there's a lot more certainty of what they're going to produce. And so to me, it's a really cool example of lifting standards, of going, what are your blue M&Ms? What are the things that you want to show up as? I remember for me when I started my weekly email, right? I was like, I want to send a weekly email. And I started missing every now and again. And my amazing wife, which by the way, I celebrated 20 years of marriage last week. I think it was last Wednesday. 20 years, guys. 20 years. I got married when I was like 12. No, I didn't. But 20 years of marriage, right? Isn't that just incredible? And so, what was I saying? My wife, she said to me, she was like, Colin, are you going to do this or not? Because I started missing a week here and there. And I realized that I was letting my standards drop. There's a great book called Going Pro. I think it's Stephen Pressfield. Gosh, if you haven't read that book, do yourself a favor. Read that book, Going Pro. Amazing book. And it really talks about like just lifting your standards, going pro on the quality of your programs, the quality of your brand, the quality of your results. Now, it's not about going pro in every single area of your life, but it's like choose an area you want to go pro in and lean into it and show up for it. That's number 2. Number 3 is amplify who you are even more. And I've given some examples of that, of, like if you're goofy, be goofy, but also like bring out all the parts of you. I was just doing a coaching session with some of my elite members, and we were talking about the fact that like bringing out those parts of you, right? If you're goofy, bring out more goofy. If you're serious, bring out, not just one part of you, bringing out multiple parts. So it's like play the whole keyboard, right? All the notes. So in your leadership, in your message, in your delivery, bring out all the authentic parts of you. Don't just be one part of you. So the idea is, one cool way to do that is just sharing personal stories, personal experiences that you've had. Share stories from your life, share vulnerable stories or difficulties that you've overcome, right? And so amplify who you are even more rather than trying to fit into a mold of wearing a suit, being stifled, being serious, being professional. You can be a leader and just be more of who you are. And I think at the core of it, leadership is about raising standards and taking courageous action. Has this been helpful? I hope it's been inspiring. I wanted to get on here and have a bit of a rant and just inspire you guys to the next level. I think that there's so much opportunity right now, by the way, to show up authentically for your audience. More than ever, people are looking for believability, authenticity, and connection. And I think showing up live, doing live presentations, whether it's in person, online, like doing live presentations is one of the best ways to build your brand, to build your credibility, all that sort of good stuff. And so, like I mentioned at the start, I'm running a masterclass coming up soon, Speak to Convert. If you haven't registered for that, come and register. It's free. It's going to be a live class. I'm excited for it. Coming up really soon. Just go to colinboyd.co/speak and you can get yourself registered. And if you haven't left a review, I was looking at the reviews, mainly in America, because that's the iTunes reviews. I'm like, I haven't had a review for a while, guys. What's going on? And so please, if you haven't left a written review for the podcast, could you do me a favor? Like take 30 seconds, go to the iTunes and just go write a review and write a written review for me. I'd really appreciate that. And take a screenshot before you publish it and send it to my Instagram, and I'll send you a course that we normally sell as a thank you present. How about that? So just go down onto the profile, onto the Expert Edge, go to write a review, click write a review, write a little review, maybe something that's been valuable from today's session, and send a screenshot before you publish it. And then publish it, obviously, and then send it to my Instagram, just a little photo, just at Colin Boyd, and I'll send you a little gift as a thank you present. So, guys, I trust today's been helpful. Stand up, be a leader, take courageous action, be more and more of just who you are. Bless you guys, and we'll see you next week on The Expert Edge. Bye for now.